session is called Let's Hear Them Speak, Affirming Student Voice in the Classroom. And I'm going to take you through today how I run about 90% of my classes. And I run it through seminar education. You are godsends. And we're actually going to engage. And one thing I'm going to ask you to do as we engage today is, this is not a role play. You are not pretending to be students in any shape or form. You are engaging as adults, as adult learners, as historians, because we're going to be looking at Kafka, and Kafka is really sexy. And so I want you to engage with that as we go through. This is how my department meetings run. So I'll talk about that later on too. Let's get going. Before we start, a couple of mindsets that I want to go over. Everyone loves mindsets in Teach Affirming. So the first one is passion. And like I said, I was in India for 6 months, and I got a chance to go to Nepal, where I met this little dudette, and you can't really see here, but there's about 15 trekkers that are behind her, and she's actually she's doing her homework, but she's actually giving an explanation of her math homework. And I was like, damn. I'm like, if my students had that kind of passion for their math homework, or let alone their history homework, I would be in a really good place with that. And so, as we come to the table today to engage, I want you to be thinking about cash, as I like to call it. Care. This is my beautiful wife. This is at the Taj Mahal. And anybody been to the Taj Mahal before? Heck yeah, you have. I mean, okay, it's one of those things that's it's really cracked up to be, right? Some of those places you go to, no, Taj Mahal is beautiful. I mean, the story behind it, everything, it's like, damn. Okay, so when you go to the Taj Mahal, though, you gotta put on these little slippers, right? And they do that to keep the marble really nice. And so I'm thinking as I'm putting that on, I'm like, I want to steal 10 of these and bring them to my classroom and put them at the entrance of my classroom so that people have to put them on before they can come into the classroom. What would that do to the mindset and to the well-being of the classroom? And to take that kind of care, to take care of your room, would do wonders when you're engaging in something like seminar, when you make yourself so vulnerable. And then Seva. It's one of the Teach for India core values, and this is Praveen. And Praveen, what struck me about him was his seva. And it's not his confidence, it's not how he was able to stand up and just stand and deliver, but it was his seva. And seva translates loosely to joyous service. And he's actually standing and he's talking about how, and they're actually what I would call a seminar, they actually have a little seminar here about how to make their school prettier. And he was just so excited about how to be of service for his class. And I just thought about this idea of seva and joyous service. If we had that mindset, again, coming into our classroom, what would that do? And again, I think seminar is a way that you can actually start that conversation. And then the very obvious, we learn for life, not for school, and this is seminar. And I'm going to say again and again that I really do see our classrooms as a chance to practice with conflict. Every single day, you should be setting up a scenario in your classroom where there's conflict. How many people here have, when you were in the classroom or been in the classroom, when you had two kids that were not getting along, and then you separate them, right? It's the exact opposite of what we should actually do. This is actually that safe place where people should be able to engage in that conflict and be able to work through that. And so, thinking about learning for life, not for school, that is the essence of what we're going to be doing today. That is seminar, dealing with conflict, talking through conflict, and particularly about a text like Kafka. First question I have for you comes from a very handsome devil, Mr. Socrates. And he says, education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. And so, I want you just to ask yourself, what do I make of this quote? How has this resonated in my life before? And you can either, if you're that person that likes to process by yourself, cool, do it. If you want to talk, do your thing. We're going to come back together in about 60 seconds. Kindling. Kindling means you put the kindling, it's the little pieces of wood that you put together to light the fire. The stoke of fire. So go ahead, talk amongst yourselves. Maria? So Maria's going to tell us, who did you talk to?
These two. Fellow performers, Courtney and Jill.
And Jill? Can you tell us what Jill said?
So Jill said that a fire builds itself.
so that, you know, when you have the kindling, but the fire actually has to build itself as opposed to someone else having to fill the fire.
What's your name again? Kyle. Kyle, who did you talk to?
I listened to my colleagues over here, but if I could add, I think a fire seems to be continuous. Of course, it's not. At a certain point, fuel will run out. But for purposes of an immediate analogy, fire seems to be continuous. If you're filling a vessel, at some point the vessel's going to be filled. So rather than something being the end, kind of the means, or maybe the catalyst. And if you look at the quote, education should catalyze something else as opposed to being the end, or you receiving this finite piece of information and that's the end of the process.
Did anybody have a class when you were a student that was like the filling of the vessel?
Yes.
How did that feel?
It's 90% of the classes that I did actually was the filling of the vessel, and it's so funny that this is a Socrates quote, because something that I've been realizing more and more is that the information that we're coming in to give our children in classes today is already out there and accessible freely. It's on their smartphones. They have it in this tiny device and they can access it at any point. And if that's all I'm doing in class, I'm redundant. You know, they don't need me there to do that anymore. So what am I bringing into a class that they're not going to get off the internet?
Love it. Yes. What are they going to get in class they don't have on the internet? Yeah. I had some classes like that, and they were just boring. They're just not fun. And I don't know about you, but teaching is fun. And I think teaching is probably like one of the hardest jobs out there. It's really, really frustrating. It's a lot of fun. And it's just not fun when you just fill vessels. Okay, next thing. Where are we going? I heard it today is we'll talk about that handsome devil Socrates. We're going to talk about why seminar matters, and we're going to be able to watch one of my favorite shows of all time. And then we're going to actually do the interpretive seminar. Okay, so I'm going to go over the steps in a nutshell, and then we're going to practice it, and then we're going to do just a wee bit of reflection, because this is Teach for America, and that's what we do nonstop. And boy, that's really great. That was a laugh. That's good. See, that was funny. Okay. What is required of students and teachers to kindle this? Okay. And then the objective here, for those of you who like that kind of thing, we're going to examine the interpretive discussion, examine how interpretive discussion, can be used to foster transformational change in our teaching, and thus transformational change for our students by identifying and practicing the steps of the seminar cycle. Any questions about where we're heading down this road? So, what's this? Little birds? Well, no, it's more than little birds, girlfriend. What is going on here? Feeding. Okay. Well, somebody tell me about the process that you see up here. Oh, come on.
So the mom,
Thank you.
or parent, goes out and just has arrived home, and there are 4 little children screaming for food, and she's about to feed them.
And how does she feed them?
Uses her beak to put the food into their mouth.
That's a very gentle way to say it. What is she?
She's got to carry it herself and then regurgitate it into those 4 empty vessels.
Yes. Okay. So she eats it and then she throws it up into their mouth. Okay. Vomit, right? Okay. How many of you like the taste of vomit? Okay. Yeah. Everyone's like, ooh, I just tasted a little, not good, right? No. Okay. Don't do this. Okay. 2 things are going to happen if you do this in your classroom. 1, nobody's going to learn anything. And then number 2, you're going to get arrested because you can't do that in public school. Okay, so don't do this, okay? And that's what I see all the time when I go in the classrooms, right? I go into a classroom and I see a teacher just like, this is what you need to know, go learn it, come back, take the test. Score 80%, high five, call it a day. That's not fun. Who cares if it's learning? It's just not fun. This is fun, okay? This is what we want in our class. Look at that Oscar, right? Passive learning is lame. Active learning tastes so much better. What are you going to want? Vomit or the fish, right? Vomit or the fish. If you take anything away from this session, think about vomit or the fish. Okay. So, excuse my little analogy there. Now, everything I need to learn, I learned from the Wonder Years at a very young age, including my first crush, Lee Cooper. So, we're actually going to watch a quick clip of the Wonder Years. And as we watch this clip, I want you to think about three things. One, I want you to think about the teacher actions that you see in the classroom that's there. It's not a traditional classroom in the sense of there are desks, yada, yada, yada. It's more of an after-school club that you're gonna see here, okay? But Mr. Tyler, this guy right here, I want you to kind of track his actions. Then I also want you to track their actions, student actions. And then the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is this mindsets, the convictions, the values that those students are going to walk out of that room with. You follow me? You picking up what I'm putting down? Stop. Okay. One of yours.
All right, well, your deal.
Hey, Mr. Tyler? When are we going to talk about the walkout?
Leave it to Mark Cooper to spoil a good thing. Well, it's about time. It's not my meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we should talk about the walkout. I think we need a strategy.
Okay.
Okay, so what do we do first?
Well, maybe you should start by figuring out how you're going to mobilize 800 students all at the same time.
Right. How do we do that?
Well, that's why we have all these lines here. What do you think, Rusty?
Good luck. It's not that Rusty Brockman was stupid. It's just that he sort of drifted through life in a purple haze.
Oh, wow. Well, we could just, like, wow.
Think, Rusty. Think.
Okay, wait. Okay. So, okay, I got it. We all split up and...
You can do it. Come on.
And knock on all the home doors to give them the signal.
Yes, that's it. Okay, relax, Rusty. This man eats sustenance. Throw me that orange cup. Eat this. Fill your strength back up.
Okay, good. So like at 9 o'clock, we go to all the homerooms, we mobilize the whole school, and then we march out on the football field.
Then what? Well, I mean, what is the point of this walkout? How is standing around in a football field going to end the war? Who's going to know the difference? Kevin?
Yeah, I don't know. Unless we can get on TV or something. Or in the papers.
Yeah, well, wait, that's good. We could use the media.
We could write a letter to Channel 5 and we could tell them to get other schools to do it too. Like Madison and Whitman.
Yeah, this whole big thing where all the kids all speak.
Mr. Tyler, can I speak to you for a moment? Okay. I have something Mr. DePerno here would like to say to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. I'm afraid that...
That was my fault. You're not supposed to stop there.
That Kennedy Junior High School cannot tolerate a student council committee that encourages students to violate school rules. Any student participating in a walkout during school hours will be subject to immediate suspension from school, and it will go on your permanent record. Do I make myself clear? Your permanent record. After the initial shock of Mr. DePerna's announcement, we did what any teenager would do when his deepest convictions are challenged. We whined.
Are we going to do it?
Well, what do you think?
I don't know. I want to get suspended from school.
Sounds pretty smart to me.
I think we should fight it.
Why?
Because we should protest the war.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys really serious about that?
Of course we are.
Why do you want to protest the war?
Because it's an imperialist act. Mr. Tyler?
No. I'm sorry. It's funny. The moment I hear the word imperialist, I go into a coma. Can't you just tell me in your own words? What about you, Kevin? Why do you want to protest the war?
I don't know.
So you're just going along with the crowd.
No.
Seems to me you don't know why you're doing something that can't be worth much.
Mr. Tyler, Tyler was right. I felt like an idiot. What did I really know about the Vietnam War? I wasn't even sure if Vietnam was one word or two.
Is it that you think all wars are wrong?
Well, yeah.
So you think nothing's worth fighting for?
Well, no, I mean,
And how can you be so sure we should end this war?
well, it's like it.
Okay. We're gonna stop there. Teacher actions, student actions, what are the mindsets, those convictions, those values that the students are gonna walk out of that room with? You can talk to the person next to you, a couple people around you, do your thing. Talk as long as it sounds. Go ahead.
I think it's really interesting that the teacher never gave answers. He was just asking every sometimes when I did in school, and I kind of just did it because it was the right thing to do, or everyone was telling me to do it.
It could be the same way in our teaching practice sometimes too. Yeah. Under a whole lifestyle.
What did Ross say?
Ross was talking about, this is really hard for me to like synthesize everything. I am going brain dead right now.
Or some of the teacher actions or student actions. Say the actions right now. What did you see happening? Or what did Ross see happening?
What we talked about with the teacher was that he didn't seem like he came with an agenda. Like he allowed the students to like lead the conversation and see where they were going to go with it. I mean, sure, in the back of his mind, he might have had an objective, but he's allowing the kids to discover that objective on their own and potentially achieve that objective by the end of the seminar.
That's scary. Not having an agenda.
And Ross pointed out that it didn't seem scripted, even though it was obviously acting.
That's real life. That's my world. What other teacher actions or student actions did you see happening? Yeah. What's your name? I'm sorry.
Lindue.
Lindue?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
One thing that we talked about was, okay, I'll speak for myself. A bad habit that I have is when a student is struggling, and then I don't want to embarrass them, or I want to quickly shift focus, or fill the sentence, finish the sentence, and he didn't do that. He kind of just, encouraged them and helped them to come to their answer.
Mm-hmm. Any other student or teacher actions that you think need to be said?
I think that the student was stumped for a while, and that's okay too, because if they're stumped, that means that there's like if they can breeze through that, they really didn't learn anything new in that time, and it's okay for them to be stumped. It's actually showing that they're getting towards a growth.
I like this.
that they're growing, and then asking the questions to get them to those answers after they're stumped, like not just leaving them in that state.
I often tell my students that learning, like teaching, is incredibly hard, it's frustrating, and it's really fun. And so often our students get frustrated and they just stop. And then we as teachers are like, oh no, frustration is good, it's okay. And what mindsets, convictions, is Kevin and his crew going to walk out? Yes, you look like you're about to say.
With that question, but I forgot your name. We was said it, but he was saying, when Kevin didn't know why he was protesting the war, and like that question of why Kevin had to decide, okay, is it because I don't want to do it because she's doing it, or is it because I believe in it? We offer opportunities of that safe space to ask students, why do you think this, and give them that time to kind of process through. And I think it's good to say or let them know something could be wrong or something could be right in a school, because we have that opportunity to kind of do that, where they might not be challenged outside of the school for what they believe and think. I think that's really good that we can do that in a Socratic seminar in the classroom in a way that's it's academic obviously, but also at the same time it's very it's building their confidence or their interpersonal skills and convictions.
And to piggyback off that, he didn't let the student regurgitate, as you just said. He answered when he told him. It's even though he did ask him why, he wanted the why to be meaningful to him and relevant to him as a middle school student, right? High school, elementary. not as, just not to college. But you didn't want to just give them the textbook answer. Because I know a lot of times I'm a high school math teacher and I'll ask a student why they did something. It's like, oh, because the direction said to. It's like, nah, that's not why. There's a deeper why to that, but it's, you know, challenging that why.
And there was a sense of optimism that also got fired up, especially after they started talking about the entire like movement, and everyone started getting engaged. It was like, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, and everyone had these ideas and hopes for what they were going to do, which wouldn't have been possible until the teacher released it to the first scholar who spoke up. And even then, within his own thinking, that first scholar changed his statement from being like a question to being like an affirmative statement, like we should do this. And then he started taking over, even in that, leading that own discussion, which gave everybody this sense of, you know, inspiration and hope.
It's great energy when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, please.
I think also it's getting the other kids to think about what the war is, right? And so that they're going to want to move forward by actually learning about the war and say, okay, well, you know, we decided that we weren't going to do it because we didn't know why, but why? You know, because they would have been seeing process in other places, so it makes them want to learn more.
And also, I think one of the biggest mindsets is to create a space where this is possible, where the teacher wasn't rewarding answers, he was rewarding thinking.
I like that. I'm writing that down. If I was in my classroom, what I do like when that happens is I take off my time and give it to the student. Say that again?
The teacher wasn't rewarding answers, he was rewarding thinking.
I think there's something.
Try and follow that.
So I think there was something really cool that happens there because, like, after my first year teaching, I started like constantly repeating this phrase to my kids, like, your opinions and your experiences matter. Mm-hmm. But something came out in that conversation that I think is even better there, where the way that he asked the questions, the kids developed sort of organically and without ever explicitly saying it, a viewpoint that not only do their voices matter, but their voices are consequential.
That was good too. Okay. Keep that in your mind. Keep Mr. Tyler, Kevin in your mind as you go through. All right, everyone picked up a handout if you can. Let the children speak. And did anybody not get one?
I mean, last session, but it's not here. Thank you. Yeah. But it's just one.
Now, is anybody familiar with Jeff Duncan Andrade?
Yes, he's amazing.
Okay. He's an educator out west and deeply motivating to me in my pedagogy. Has had a lot of influence in terms of what I do in my classroom. And one thing that he says is there's no playbook for teaching. And in the wake of scripted curriculum and trying to systematize everything, I really want to tell you that what I've put in front of you here and what you've picked up today is not a playbook. This is not a protocol. This is like a series of things that I do in my classroom to help me foster student discussion. Okay, so this is my experience. This is how I've done it in my classroom, and it's a lot of fun, and I want to share it with you. With that said, take it, mold it, do what you do, inject your personality into it, and then let me know what you do because I want to improve too. Okay? So as we go through today, please don't think that you have to be married or to this in this shape and form. Okay? This is all about ingenuity and making something better. With that said, this is how I do it, okay? And so there are like a series of steps that I take in order to increase student discussion and seminar in the classroom. And we're gonna actually do it today. And the first step is you have to gather the wood, okay? Now, this is for textual seminar, okay? You have to anchor your seminar in a text. And so part of it is trying to figure out, okay, where am I in my curriculum, in my classroom, who are my students, what is the text that I'm going to choose? And so the process that I go through when I'm choosing a text is as follows. First thing I have to do is know my students. I teach history and I often tell them no history, no self. And I have to know their experiences, their past, the relationships that I have with them to know the type of text that I can put in front of them, because that matters. Recall the values of your class. Now, there is an order to this as well. Know your students, recall the values of your classroom. Standards are not up there, okay? And there's a reason for that. Because we often talk about having values in our classroom, but we often talk about standards first. When you do that, you are anchoring your standards into nothing, okay? And when that happens, everything just kind of falls apart. But when you start with your values and you think about the values of your classroom, you start there, then you can start to anchor and kind of build those standards into your values. That's when it matters. And so in this particular scenario that we're going to work with today, the two values that I was working with my students were empathy and community. So now that I knew where we were in terms of the values that we were working with, and I kind of looked at where we were in terms of my curriculum. And what we were going to be looking at was the Holocaust and World War II, okay? Not a very light subject. And so I was trying to figure out how to introduce this topic. And the text that really stood out to me in this was Kafka's Fellowship. It is a very spicy text. And to have your kids reading Kafka is pretty awesome, okay? It was a lot of fun. It's a short piece, okay? It's ambiguous, it's grade appropriate. And so I went on this like scavenger hunt, and honestly, this is often the hardest part about building a seminar curriculum, is finding the appropriate text. And so finding Kafka's Fellowship was like gold mine. It's great. And so we're going to look at Kafka's Fellowship today, and we're actually going to do the seminar. Then you got to craft the spiciest questions once you have that text. Now, crafting the spiciest question takes a lot of practice. I'm still like working on it. I would not put myself as an expert or a master at it in the least bit, but I have practiced it a lot. Okay? This is actually how we run my department meetings back at Achieving First. So every Friday, we meet in my room. The room is set up a little bit like this. We sit in a circle with the department, and we actually, a teacher will bring a text, and we'll have a seminar on it. And that will last 3 weeks, okay, 3 different meetings, and then we switch teacher, and the next teacher brings a text. And we engage in it as adults. Not kids, we're not role-playing, we're engaging with it as adults. So we're exercising our own minds and our own practice in this type of pedagogy. Okay, so gotta gather the wood. That's the first thing you need to do. And so I've done that step for us already, and so we're gonna be looking at Kafka's Fellowship. The second step that you need to do is chopping the wood. So when you Google image chopping wood, this is the first thing that comes up, okay? That is not me, and we're gonna skip over. Okay, so pre-reading reflection hook is the first thing that you need to do. And this is where you kind of bring it home for a kid. This is where you think about empathy, you think about community, and how it relates to their own lives, right? And so everyone loves a hook question, it's spicy, a little bit sexy, here it is. Okay. Can I have somebody with a loud, booming voice from this off first? Very good, thank you.
Describe a time in your own life where you felt left out or excluded from a group that you desperately wanted to be a part of. What were the circumstances? Were you ever able to resolve the situation or gain access to the group?
And you actually have that hook question in the packet that you picked up on the way in. And so if you could actually flip to that, I want you to actually reveal your deep, dark secret about this question. We're going to take about 2 minutes or so. Get your pens in your hands, do that thing that you do, and we'll come back together. And when you're finished with that sentence, turn, talk to your partner, say, partner, what's the deepest, darkest secret that you have in terms of being left out in life? Go ahead.
Looking back at it now, it wouldn't have been in my best interest, and like they didn't really have a really solid friendship. They were more about like the image of being popular than actually being true friends. But I just joined. I tried out for the same stuff.
I don't know. In Filipino culture, you're really tied into your family, and you grew up with it. It's a generation close to your cousins or your best friends, and we didn't grow up that way.
Then as we all grew older, obviously, like the perspective we remember the situation. So it's predicated on wanting to be more involved, and that just like changed.
So before I left for India, I called my bro, lives down in Philly. I live in Brooklyn. And like, bro, like, you gotta come up, you know, I'm gonna be leaving soon, we gotta chill. And he was like, I'm really busy, yada, 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 yada. So I'm like, all right, I understand, you're a busy guy, do your thing. So it's like maybe a week before I leave for India. And I'm checking out the Facebook, because that's what we do, facebook.com. And I'm looking at the Facebook, and I see that my bro had actually posted some pictures to the facebook.com, and he was in the borough of Brooklyn. I know. He was in the borough of Brooklyn, like a mile down the road at a concert, and the dude didn't call me. There with his friends, chilling, felt left out. And appropriately so. When I put this up there, I think a lot of people think, oh, this is like a question for kids. No, I felt left out. I did. I felt left out. I'm like leaving for 6 months for India. It's the other side of the world. Geography lesson right there. And teachable moment. I think that's what we call it. And dude didn't look me up. He didn't, give me a call. Felt left out. Judith is actually going to tell us a story about how Corey felt left out.
I didn't expect that.
No, so you're going to tell us what Corey said. So you're going to tell us Corey's situation.
His
yes.
story. You didn't... yeah, of course. That he was applying for a scholarship. And he really wanted to get to have that scholarship because he will be surrounded by really, really intelligent people, right? And really smart people and really friendly. So he really wanted to get in, but at the end he didn't get the scholarship. So he was like kind of frustrated, but he also learned from that experiences. And at that moment he thought, okay, I need to go further and to look for other opportunities. So.
What's your name? Chris, who did you talk to? Jill. Can you tell us what Jill's moment was when she was left out?
So it wasn't so much a moment, it was actually pretty deep. It was like talking about how this is like a life thing. It was about like being the concept of like insider, outsider, and how sort of like going throughout the entire time of life, how there's this feeling of always sort of like being like a part of things, but feeling somewhat removed from it, and like the constant striving to be, included and involved.
It's perfect. Perfect segue. Thank you for letting us hear that story. Thank you, Corey. I want you to take that in your mind now, and I want us all now to look at a text. Okay, the text that you have in front of us, and it's Kafka's Fellowship. And so if you could, turn to that text, and I am actually going to do an oral reading. Now, this is where I get a little pushback on this kind of pedagogy here. And when I do an oral reading, the pushback that I get in 10th grade is, kids need to be reading on their own. I hear that. I'm like, yes, absolutely, they need to be reading on their own, okay? But I still do the oral reading. And the reason that I do the oral reading is that, I don't know about any of you that are still in the classroom, but I have kids that are reading on a variety of reading levels, okay? And so the point of this exercise is to have conversation, to practice with conflict. When I do the oral reading, I have instantly leveled the playing field. Okay, now that child who cannot read very well and would not be able to have access to that text can now engage, and that feels good. That feels good for that student, it feels good for me as a teacher, it feels good for the person sitting next to them. And so the oral reading does level the playing field to a certain degree, okay? As I do the oral reading, I want you to look at these robust annotations. This is like super simple, right? This is like question mark. Put a question mark where you have a question about the text. Exclamation point where you're surprised, a star where you think things are important, and circle any unfamiliar vocabulary. Now, this does, again, a couple of other things for me as a teacher, as the instructor and the facilitator of the seminar. I can walk around as I'm doing the oral reading, and I can look over the shoulder of students and see who's circling the entire page and has no idea what's going on, okay? That's good for me as a facilitator to know, okay, as I go through. It also just sees like how kids are like having a conversation with Kafka, because that's what they're doing. They're having a conversation with Kafka. And so it shows me the dialogue that's going on between them in symbols. So I'm going to do oral reading. All you need to do is just engage in the robust annotations, enjoy everyone that's being read to, and so enjoy that. And I need a copy of that on top here. We are 5 friends. One day we came out of the house, one after the other. First one came and placed himself beside the gate. Then the second came, or rather he glided through the gate like a little ball of quicksilver, and placed himself near the first one. Then came the third, then the fourth, then the fifth. Finally, we stood in a row. People began to notice us. They pointed at us and said, "Those 5 just came out of that house." Since then, we have been living together. It would be a peaceful life if it weren't for a 6th one continually trying to interfere. It doesn't do us any harm, but he annoys us, and that is harm enough. Why does he intrude where he is not wanted? We don't want him, and don't want him to join us. There was a time, of course, when the 5 of us did not know one another either. And it could be said that we still don't know one another. But what is possible and can be tolerated by the 5 of us is not possible and cannot be tolerated with this 6th one. In any case, we are 5 and don't want to be 6. And what is the point of this continual being together anyhow? It is also pointless for the 5 of us. Here we are together, and will remain together. A new combination, however, we do not want, just because of our experiences. But how is one to make all this clear to the 6th one? Long explanations would almost amount to accepting him in our circle. So we prefer not to explain and not to accept him. No matter how he pouts his lip, we push him away with our elbows, but however much we push him away, back he comes. So what I want you to do now is I want you to, with the people that are sitting around you, I want you to think about where were those questions. Okay? Write those questions down in the margin or on the bottom of your page there, and spend like a couple minutes doing this, just like talking to the people that are around you about the questions that you have of the text. Go ahead.
Talk amongst yourselves.
The idea that kids can do that. Sure. And then the stars naming the personalities. The circle.
I have my group.
That's perfect. But this shit is so rude. Long explanations will almost amount to he's like,
I'm not gonna write out these because I don't have any questions about it.
As I went back, one line that was really interesting. He says, "And it can be said that we still don't know one another."
So you're not really we're gonna go around, and we're not gonna do that every single person.
No, there's a writing project. That's right.
I just want you to kind of share out some of the questions that were brooding with your group, okay? And so maybe just a couple of the questions as we go around within the groups that you were in. If you could just have like one person that was in that group just share out one of the questions. So we'll start going this way, and then we'll just kind of go around.
So we are from Teach for All. So we first just made sure we understood all of the words. So the questions were more about vocabulary, but if I can add in, for me, it's not a question in a specific, but it was really kind of insightful to see the other part of the story, given that we were telling how we felt left out. Like reading this text is how they felt, like the group feeling that there was another element kind of to intruding. And I think we all have felt, probably when we were young, those feelings, like we've always felt, I don't know, someone who didn't want to come together. So I do think it's really insightful, but I do go back kind of to a point where he says, and what is the point of this continual being together anyhow? He's just like, he asked himself, like, why do we have to be 5 or 6? But then again, he went back, we are still going to be the 5 of us. So I don't know, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think it's very insightful text.
So I'm just writing down exactly what we said. Why does the narrator say,
And what is the point of this continual being together anyhow?
Cool. Next group.
Sure. I was struck by the first word, we. Am I a part of this we? And if I'm not, then why is the speaker talking to me when it seems like he's having with 5 people?
Love it.
We talked about like whether he really knows his purpose for not wanting another person. Like if I could ask him like a why, I feel like I would keep asking him, but why? Because I feel like he isn't really clear as to why. He even says he doesn't even know his group that much anyway. Or like what's the point? So I would really push back, like, do you even know why? Just a lot of whys.
Got it.
I put at the end, what is motivating the 6th person to keep coming back and being excluded over and over again?
Is it okay if I put what is motivating number 6?
No, I wanted to pick the 6th person.
This group right here?
Okay.
The title is fellowship. It's not something like intruder, which is like what he goes back to. This person's intruding, but he names it fellowship. So it really kind of frames the narrator's perspective from which he's seeing what's happening right now.
So what's the how would you pose the question?
I guess the question would be more like, how does the title frame the narrator's perspective?
Our question, one of ours kind of goes along with that too, is when it says it's pointless for the 5 of us, but here we are together, that they're kind of joined with their experiences. Like, what experiences have the 5 of them had together that created that bond that they don't feel this 6th person is a part of? So maybe like what experiences shaped that fellowship between the 5 group?
Spicy question.
I can go. I mean, we're going to kind of repeat things that have already been said, but we definitely wondered about what is this fellowship based on? What are these experiences? Why were only a couple of the people who came out of the house described kind of specifically, and then the last 3 were just kind of like, oh, there was a 3rd, 4th, 5th. Yeah, why don't they know each other that well?
Love.
Well, inside of our partnership, we had a very similar question to the woman who spoke right here, the blonde. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. Courtney. Hi, Courtney. So same question, and my partner and I thought about it very differently. She had posed the same question as Courtney did, but my question was like, what makes 6 different? And like from that experience, so yeah, we're looking at this bottom of why is 6 who he is? Why does he stay on this outside and he's not allowed? Other questions were just like, were they arrested? What did they do?
I don't know.
I don't know if this happened to anyone else, because when I was reading it, I was just kind of like, okay, I get it. I don't have too many questions about it because I remember experiencing it in high school. You know, I was just like, yeah, well, I know the feeling of not wanting someone to come in, and it kind of.
You were number 3.
I was on both ends. But yeah, so if I was in high school and someone asked me to write down what I was thinking, it would probably not be Kafka, but you know, sound a little bit as, you know, unclear or vague as some of this.
So what I do with these questions now, okay? So I actually have students spend some time going through and they make lists of questions. And then we segregate them out. And so we have lists of speculative questions, evaluative questions, and interpretive questions. I love speculative questions. They're fun, they're exciting, they're not what we're doing here. Evaluative questions, awesome, right? That's what we did with the hook question. Bring it home, bring it to me, bring it to like my life experience, bring it to, you know, my grandma who's amazing, right? Everyone loves Grandma Racine, okay? She's great. That's not what we're doing. Interpretive questions, okay? What is the narrator getting at? That's where the real rigor is in many regards. And so, especially when we think about like the coming of Common Core, that wave that everyone's talking about, I think it's a trend, I don't know. But it's interpretation, okay? What is going on here in the text? those are the questions that we're going to focus on in the seminar, and that's what we call an interpretive discussion. And so we focus on those interpretive questions. Now, many questions that I get is like, do you go over that with your students? Like, how do they know what is what? I actually don't teach it. We just do it. And we do it again and again and again and again. And so I never really define it for them, but they see me do it at the beginning of the year, and then they start to see how they start to segregate them out between speculative questions, kind of like questions that, the what ifs, the evaluative questions that bring it home to me, and then the interpretive questions that ask questions of the text. So that's like the sharing of questions. The next, do you have a question?
I do, may I ask?
Is it, yeah, please.
So, and I'm not sure if this was given, but what context would they have? Would you give this to them with the description of the author? Would you go over that?
So I've done this text 4 times with them in the same place in the content. And then at one time I did it at the very beginning of the year. It was the first thing that students saw when they came into class. I go back and forth. I don't think they need it. I think it's cool, but sometimes I have them read it afterwards, but I'm not too worried about it.
And here, I think I didn't get the instructions as well. So it's what questions will you do, like kind of to the author?
Yes.
Or,
to the narrator, yeah, of the text.
Okay.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Next step. Build it. Okay. And this is like the second day. So this is really when I do a seminar, a full-fledged seminar. Like we have just done day 1 with the oral reading, the hook question, the oral reading, the robust annotations, and the sharing of questions. That's day 1. Day 2, they come in, and we do what's called a focused annotation. Okay? And this is especially at the beginning of the year. They come in, we'll do it in class. Later on, I'm giving it for homework, and then they can come in and we can have the focused annotation discussion. But the focused annotation offers students a chance to reread the text with a very specific lens. And so in this case, the way that I'm going to have students analyze the text and pick it apart is through this annotation scheme of inclusion and exclusion. So I want you to go back into the text now, and I want you to pick it apart for places where you see inclusion and places where you see exclusion. Let me give you an example. I'm an optimist, and so when I see the first line, we are 5 friends, okay, I see inclusion, okay? And so I'm gonna take my pen and I write an I, and then I write a few words about why I see inclusion here. So the number 5, okay, it makes me feel like there's an inclusion of 5 people coming together, and the word we, okay, that Ross mentioned earlier, okay, that we word actually makes me think of inclusion, okay, people coming together, we. Now my wife, she's a pessimist, and she actually sees this as exclusion, and so she's like, Taylor, this is exclusion, so she actually writes an E there. Okay, this is actually a true story. And so she actually marks this as an exclusion because she thinks that the number 5 is a cutoff number and there can be no more after 5. So that's how she interprets it. Okay? It's the same sentence. I see it one way, she sees it another way. Okay? I want you to go through the text by yourself and actually pick it apart for places that you see inclusion and places that you see exclusion. I am like, and so many questions I get is like, do you have your students write incomplete sentences? Hell no, okay? Absolutely not. I don't have time for that, neither do they, okay? So I want them actually writing the margins, making it messy. I want to see annotations everywhere, okay? Having a conversation with the narrator. Go ahead.
Can I ask you, when they do this, have you already linked to this, to the content of
Nope.
the Holocaust? This is all just fresh and
This is how we introduce it. Yeah. But again, I'm just giving you a little taste. Desiree, can you bring us to a place in the text that you marked? Any place that really sparks your fancy, any place that gets you going?
one place I marked is on line 6.
Okay.
Where he said, it would be peaceful if it weren't those 6 one continually trying to interfere.
How'd you mark that?
I marked that as exclusion, and I circled the word interfere as just a really negative word that sort of makes it sound like there's this fence between them and he doesn't want anybody else crossing over on their side.
Joey, did you mark that, please?
Did I mark the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How did you mark it? You marked it exclusion? Did you mark it exclusion for the same reasons or for different reasons as Desiree?
Just the word interfere is a negative word that shows that he doesn't want anybody else being part of his group.
Yes.
Cool. Can you take us to another spot that you marked?
Towards the end of the passage, it says, "In the combination, however, we do not want just because of our experiences, unmarked exclusion."
Sorry, which one?
However, we do not want just because of our experiences, unmarked that exclusion. It seems to be compounding their desired exclusions.
You marked it inclusion?
Because I was thinking like it's our experiences, like they shared in it, so they didn't want someone else to come and be part of it, but they had already experienced it as like one. So ours, to me, represent like togetherness.
So, Joey, now that you've heard Courtney say her little piece about inclusion, how does that make you feel?
It's interesting. It's a different perspective, and
You can be mean, it's okay.
I just think I can see it either way. I'm not necessarily changing my opinion, but I can see it either way.
Tisha, did I say that right? Tisha? You do have it spelled phonetically. Tisha, you had your hand up, you're like, what's up? Perfect. Same thing.
No, I agree with the inclusion because what I wrote shared experiences, and I often think when people share experiences, it's
Look at them, not me, I'm ugly.
very inclusive and in their group. So that's something I wrote inclusion.
Lewis, take us to another place in the text.
Okay, so this place was interesting because when I put at the beginning where we put "we are 5 friends," I saw it as your wife did as exclusion.
You're a pessimist, cool.
But in line 11, where it says, "In any case, we are 5 and don't want to be 6," I saw the beginning, "we are 5" as an I and "don't want to be 6" as an E. So I saw both of that in the same line, which then made me think about, because I could see everything as exclusion. So I was like, I need to start seeing the "we" as inclusion, otherwise I wouldn't see any inclusion. I had a hard time finding inclusion.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's inclusion based
On excluding somebody else.
The only piece that I did see, because I have like a whole page of E's, the only piece that I did see that was semi-inclusion was like lines 8 and 9, where it said like there was a time, of course, when the 5 of us did not know one another. So like, I mean, there's a time when none of us knew each other, so everybody can be a part of the crew. But then it was very quickly turned into, but I mean, you don't want that one.
What is it? No, hold on. What was it about this new combination? There was a time, of course, and what was it about that made you kind of see a little bit of inclusion?
Because it kind of provided like a glimmer of hope, because at one point none of us knew each other.
Why is that
hopeful? None of us, because in my eyes as I saw it, like we don't really know this person or want this person, but at one point we didn't know each other either. So maybe there is a chance that the 6th can be a part of what we have going on, but it's just not here yet.
It's interesting because I marked that as exclusion, if only because that phrase, "there was a time, of course," even separated by the commas, it's a time that is separate from the moment that is now. So that time has been excluded from the current situation.
And I really, to relate off of Roxanne's point, I underlined back he comes at the end of line 17, like, but however much you push him away, back he comes. And I marked that as inclusion, and I annotated and said that because they're indirectly welcoming him back into the fold every single time. If they really wanted to exclude him, then they wouldn't talk to him, they wouldn't say anything, they would have pushed him away. But if he's continuing to come back and back he's coming, then there's something there that they're doing, even though they say they're pushing him away, that's actually welcoming him back.
I can't see your name, I'm sorry, but...
Jamila.
Jamila?
Jamila.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think I had a similar reaction to Jamila when I saw 6 on line 14. So like at first this seems like very exclusionary the first couple times we see this, but the only identities we have for each of the 5 like in-group folks are their numbers. And so by giving him the same sort of identity that they've given themselves, there's sort of a tacit or unconscious acknowledgement to like the fact that he's at some level the same.
I thought it was kind of interesting. So initially I marked everything as exclusion. Then hearing people say inclusion, I'm really thinking of this in terms of sort of this dichotomous dialectic relationship where in none of these circumstances is it exclusively exclusive or exclusively inclusive. It's sort of on the range of a dialectic. Everything is somewhere in between. It's never the polar opposite of one part of the spectrum.
Well, actually, can we go here first? Could we have her?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Bryson. I think that they're really just the 5 are replicating the behaviors that are being pressed upon them. So
take us to a part in the text though, where you marked.
Lines 4 and 5, where it says, people began to notice us. They pointed at us and said, those 5 just came out of that house. And so right there, that was a point of both exclusion and inclusion, because one, they're being excluded by whoever these people are that are pointing them out and singling them out as the 5. But it's also a point of inclusion because they're identifying themselves as the 5. And that 6th one is also being identified as a number. And so no matter how much that individual tries to pull out, he or she still has that same like identification through number type thing relationship going.
You're like shaking your head. You're like, Jack.
I just did the same exact annotations as him. I have we sit in a row inclusion because they're identifying together physically as a row, and then in the next thought they are being excluded by the other people within the environment who are pointing at them. So they see themselves included into this row, but then they also see themselves as excluded from everyone else around them.
Jill, what do you think?
I also marked this, and I marked it as exclusion because I felt like the 5 that labeled themselves as a 5 and everyone else as others. And so that same line is just, they began to notice us and they pointed at us, but I felt like that was them excluding themselves and looking at themselves as the 5 and everyone else as the others.
Maria, you looked up and you gave this like,
Well, because I saw it as exclusion first, but then I didn't. Well, now I'm confused because I hadn't thought of that perspective, that it was them being excluded by the rest of the people.
Okay, I'm gonna step out and like get meta here. So, a couple things that I don't know if you noticed in terms of like the conversation. Like, I do have like similar questions I'm gonna ask students again and again and again. I'm gonna ask them to go to a certain part of the text every single time, and I think it's important to. This is not a debate, right? I'm sick of debate. I'm done with it. I think it's an important skill, and I think building an argument is great and wonderful. That's not what this is, and it's beautiful because we're all like working on the same team, working towards a collective truth about a text. There's nobody here that's like got their feet in the sand and is not willing to give up their perspective, right? And I am very quick as a teacher when I'm in this circle, when there's a student that changes their mind about an annotation that they have, to shout it out. Right when it happens, I'm like, yo, that dude or dudette has just changed their mind on something that they were like really adamant about. Let's give it up for them. Okay, it shows that empathy. Okay, remember going back to the beginning, one of the key values that we were working with was empathy, trying to stand in the shoes of somebody else, see somebody else's perspective. And that can happen on a variety of levels. It can happen within the text, it can happen within the conversation. Okay. So that's the focused annotation discussion. There's a couple of tools that I have here that you picked up when you came in that actually help with students tracking the conversation. One of them is the seminar turntable graphic organizer. And this turntable actually allows students to track the conversation and think through some of the conversation. So it's got a couple boxes like this. It's fancy, real fancy. I made it. It's got boxes. Okay. So the one I ask students to do here is identify places in the text where there's 3 things that I'm looking for. During the conversation, I want you to identify one of your classmates who has marked a spot in the text the same way as you have. And I actually have them go through, okay, how did the teammate annotate it? Why did they mark it this way? And do you agree or disagree now that you've heard their reflections? Then I have them look at a place or identify a place that a student marked differently than they marked. So there's a couple instances here where I think it was Courtney, you saw something as inclusion that Joey saw as exclusion, okay? And so that would be, you would actually mark down Joey's name, and then you would actually talk about, right here in this place, how Joey marked it, and then you would actually talk about, you would critique it about, okay, now that I've heard his point of view, do I agree, do I want to shift my position on this, okay? And then the most nuanced one is on the back, and you're asking students to identify a place that a classmate has marked the same but for a different reason. Okay, so it's the same, they marked it inclusion, I marked it inclusion, but Lewis marked it inclusion for a very different reason than I did. Okay, and so you're actually going to write that down too, and you're going to critique that point of view as well, that reason, I should say. And this is just a tool, right? Take it or leave it, use the tool, don't be a tool, is usually what I tell my students. But when I find students during a seminar and I'm looking around and all students are just writing, I'm like, take it, crumple it up, and throw it behind you, because that's when all of a sudden students are more interested in actually writing something down than actually taking part in the conversation. So just take that as a warning that it could be a good thing for students to do that night when they go home, to kind of reflect on the focused annotation discussion, but that's not the point. The point is that they're engaging in the conversation, that they're talking about. Okay, the next part about this is we're going to move into gotta light the fire. And that comes with the actual interpretive seminar, pre-write. And so the actual question that's being asked here is on the back of the right now that you wrote down. And so it says, according to the narrator, okay, notice the words there, the narrator, are we supposed to sympathize with the 5 or with the 1? And so I'm not going to explain anything. Just what do you think? Are we supposed to sympathize with the 5 or with the 1? Often what I ask students to do, if they have a hard time with this, draw a line down the middle and then actually write reasons why we should sympathize and reasons why we should sympathize with the 5 and with the 1 on either side. Just try and balance the argument as you go through. So take just a little bit of time and then we're going to just jump right into it.
But it's funny though.
So you know
you guys should.
All right. So Noreen's going to start us off. Noreen, are we supposed to sympathize with the 5 or with the 1, with the number 6?
Okay, I'm torn.
God has nothing to do with it.
Because we've all been the 1, you know, at some point or another, but at the same time, we are, or we should be entitled to our own opinions, and you know, others shouldn't impose their beliefs or values upon us. And so I don't know.
But that's what Noreen would say. What would the narrator say?
I think
You think Kafka's confused? I'm gonna. I mean, dude can't even stand up for him. He's dead. I mean, he can't even stand up for himself. What do you think?
I'll go with 5.
Why? Takes 2 apart in the text that makes you think that we should side.
I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Take us to a place in the text where it tells you that we should side with the 5.
Well, I think he does a good job of like kind of giving us like a negative impression of 6.
Where?
So he's annoying. Line 7. Why does he intrude?
Am I annoying and intrusive right now as I keep asking you more questions?
So just like those are just like those words with negative connotations. It just like makes me think like, okay, like what is this person doing? I want to know more.
I feel like that's us. We want to know more. We're like the 6th person. And that's why I think we should identify or we should sympathize with the 6th person. Because we're never, as outsiders, we're not going to be part of the 5. And one thing I was hung up on at the beginning, like Kyle was saying, is like, what's the context and like, what's the backstory? And I think it works well without a backstory because you don't know these things and the 6th person doesn't know what made them come together. And I guess specific part of the text, I picked out, well, right at the close to the end, I'd say lines 13 to 15. It says, however, we do not want just because of our experiences, and we're questioning why, just like this 6th person. And then he goes into long explanations, would almost amount to essentially in an orange circle. I feel like that's directed towards us too, because we're like, well, why don't you want to accept him? It's like, well, you can't tell him, but we're also not going to tell you, because you're not a part of our 5 either. So.
Yeah, it says like he will never know. It says we prefer not to explain, and so we're just not going to accept him. So like that person and us, we will never know why we can never get in, and you're just going to keep. So that's why he keeps coming, or she keeps coming back, but she will still never know.
I know for me, call me a sucker, but I just feel a responsibility to. I told you to do that. I feel a responsibility to acquiesce to what I interpret the author to want me to do. And the author is, while he may not be the elected representative, he is part of the 5. And he says specifically, we don't know him and don't want him to join us. He says it can't be tolerated with a 6th one. So most of me thinks if that's what the author has presented me, or the narrator has presented me, and I should consider his perspective and I should sympathize with the 5.
You're like shaking your head, like no. Don't punch it.
She's like, absolutely not. I'm so surprised because it landed so differently to me. So the question is, are we supposed to sympathize with the 5 or with the 1? And if I had to, after reading the text to see who I sympathize with, I sympathize with number 6. And I sympathize with number 6 because I felt that he or she was getting, I don't know what the exact phrase is, but the raw deal or the short end of the stick or something of that sort. Because I felt that the narrator didn't give us enough of a coherent explanation of why they were excluding number 6. So I was dissatisfied with their argument, and that makes me think that he wants me to sympathize with number 6.
I think that the question.
Love it when that happens. It's beautiful, right? You got kids like talking over each other, right? That's a beautiful sound in a classroom. Okay, we are out of time. No. So. So there's a couple of different things actually. So quick, I know I've had a good class when I do the hallway test. Anybody know what the hallway test is? It's when you follow your students out into the hallway and you're like, listen, and you're like, yo, are they talking about class or are they talking about the girlfriend? And I know that I've hit something when kids are talking about Kafka out in the hallway after class. I'm like, damn, that's good. That feels good. So keep that in mind. Like that's the anxiety that you want. A couple of like last parting words here. I said it at the beginning. Your classroom is an opportunity for kids to practice with conflict every single day. If you're not doing that, what are you doing? Because each assignment, each seminar, each conversation that you have in the classroom should be preparing kids for life, not for something that goes into the grade book. There's nothing worse than walking into a classroom, looking at the board, and seeing an assignment that is meant for the teacher's grade book and has nothing to do with how that student will react after school, a week from now, even a month from now, right? Be thinking about that as you're giving assignments, especially discussion in the classroom. What is this really about, okay? Keep it interpretive. Always push. I was like teasing Noreen a little bit, but I was like, go back to the text. Tell me where in the text is it, okay? Go back to it. Let me see. I want to know where it is. There are a couple questions that Desiree had about just like facilitation. I sit down and I have the conversation with my students. I'm sitting in random spots throughout the class. I change my seat. There's no teacher chair. Every chair is the same. I am on bar with all of my students. I am facilitating. I am not like the sage on the stage. I am facilitating. I add to it. I engage with the seminar. That's what we do. Okay, we're all in this together. We're trying to find a collective truth to copy. Lots of questions that come up have to do with class size and how do you do this in a big group. So I have classes of 32. That's, some people think that's really big. Some people are like, oh, yo, I got like 45. Okay. For my LA folks that are out and have like 50 kids in the class, I hear you. Okay. Something that I do is I actually split the class in two. And I have two seminars going on at the same time. It works, okay? You gotta have your management down, but it works, okay? And, you know, as I go further into the year, I always like identify a couple students who I'm like, yo, you can facilitate, you do it. And at the end of the year, I have students facilitating and I'm in the back just chilling, okay? And that's fun too, but then I get into the conversation because it's text and it's fun and I like history. And then I get called on too, which is really cool when a student calls on you. That's awesome. And they're taking my job, that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's kind of addressing a couple of those things that people have anxiety about. The last part about it is for teachers who are like, maybe you're coaching a second-year teacher or a first-year teacher, maybe you're going into like your third or fourth year and you want to do this in your classroom, and you're like, but I have to get the management down before I do it. I have to have the culture down in my classroom before I can do this. It's not true. I do this on day one. On day one, we have a seminar. And this is how you build culture in your classroom. This is how you build trust in your classroom. This is how you show students that you are vulnerable and you're willing to be vulnerable with your students. It happens through seminar. You show them it's okay. So that's a couple of things that I have about that. I'm just gonna run through really quick. If you gotta run, do it. This is just about writing assignments that come after this. So one thing that I have gone back to, so in my first and second year in the classroom, I used to do a lot of very creative writing assignments. And I used to have a lot of fun with that, and then I was told that it wasn't rigorous. I've actually gone back to it, because I actually am calling it bullshit, because I think it is really, really rigorous. And so one thing that I have the students do more of are these thinking outside the box alternative assignments after a seminar. And so one of the assignments that I have them do is after we do a seminar on Tales of Bloody Khaki. It's a perspective from a World War I soldier in the trenches. And I actually have students after the seminar do a focused annotation, we do a seminar, and they actually do a letter from the trenches. They write a letter from the trenches. They get emotional about it. They read them. They get emotional about it. It's really, you got like a kid crying about a letter from the trenches. I'm like, yo, that was like 1917. Newspaper articles. Okay, have them write from the perspective of a journalist at that time period that you're working in. Okay, music, dance, drama, theater. We do a text from Cortez about genocide in South America. Okay, about taking over the Incas, and they actually will do a dramatic activity. Each group has to do a scene from the text, and the other students have to identify which scene it is. Those are rigorous things that you can have students do. In terms of evaluation, you have a rubric here. Feel free to use it, feel free to chuck it, it's up to you. I think the most important part about it is that students are actually setting their goals. And I am not settling for something like, I'm gonna talk 3 times today. Go a little deeper, okay? What is it that you're going to do today? When you speak 3 times today, what is that gonna sound like for the rest of us? They write their goals, they give themselves a grade, they justify it, and they hand it in, and then I can reflect with them about next steps to make the seminar better. Something that's also controversial that I do is I also give them a grade. And I actually give a group grade almost every single time we do a seminar, and sometimes I only give a group grade because that matters more. And so in the grade book, you are getting the same grade as Ross and as Courtney and as everybody else. That makes parents sometimes very, very unhappy. I believe very deeply in that though, because I believe that the seminar cannot be good, kids cannot learn if everybody in the class is not contributing 110%. And so it's a group grade, A, B, C, D. And so we agree on it, we talk as a class about it, we talk about next steps, and then we give ourselves a grade. I get that grade too, that's on me. Okay? And so I'm part of that, I'm getting that grade, I feel it just as deeply. So those are a couple things about evaluation. We gotta roll. Nope. Cool. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is just tdelhagen@gmail.com, and I'm more than happy to talk about it.